Hey, my name's Jared Moon, and I'm part of a group of underground athletes you've probably never even heard of before. Most of us don't even have gym memberships. We don't have every piece of equipment known to man, nor do we have a ton of time to train. And we don't need it because we're achieving amazing things without it. We are garage gym athletes, and these are our stories. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jared Moon here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
Hey, how's it going?
Going well. Going very well. I'm going to start with this podcast is sponsored by Your Body, and I've been given facts of the week. And this one is it's a weak fact. It's not a great fact, but
Tidbit.
It's a tidbit, and I think that this is interesting. So, if you are an athlete, you are probably familiar with VO2 max, or it is your maximal oxygen consumption. So it's the highest amount of oxygen that can be taken in, transported, and used during heavy muscular work. And what I find interesting about it, because anywhere you read in an actual textbook about VO2 max, it always says two stipulations. The first stipulation is it says VO2 max is the best measure of cardiorespiratory fitness, period. There's no other, that is the best. But there's always the next sentence. It doesn't matter which book you're reading or whatever, it says it somewhere, maybe the same paragraph at least. It is not the best predictor of performance. So it is the best measure of cardiorespiratory fitness, but it is not the best predictor of performance. And that's why we have competitions, Spartan races, marathon runs, the CrossFit Games, all these things, because it'd be really easy just to have a VO2 max test, right? And so we all these people show up and we hop on bikes or treadmills and we do a max VO2 test the legitimate way. And then at the end, we're like, obviously, this person is the fittest. He has the highest VO2 max. But we know as human beings that's not true because there's that mental or human element that can make someone excel over someone else. So they could have a lesser VO2 max and push themselves more, push themselves harder, be more mentally tough, whatever the case may be. So that's my facts. To move away from just the science and factual information is don't forget about that side. And that's what I don't want to forget about in doing all these science-y topics that we've been doing on this podcast. I'm way more into that stuff. As a passion is mine of just diving into people's mindset and everything like that. So I didn't want to lose sight of that. I like to remind everyone that data is data, but humans are better. That's all I gotta say. All right, man. Give me an update. How's your week? I have a lot of updates, so I'm gonna let you.
I don't have much going on. Training back to normal. Yeah. Training back to normal on regular hard to kill because after my rib injury, I was even telling Liz last week. I was like, man, I think I'm gonna have to actually go back to normal training, and I knew it was gonna be much harder. Yeah, I knew it was gonna be much harder than my 30 minutes on a bike because now I see why some people when they go to the gym, their conditioning or cardio is just 30 minutes of steady state something because it's pretty easy. Yeah,
very easy. It's a good way to get nowhere.
Yeah.
No pun intended for stationary bike.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. I mean, I burned calories. I sweat. I got my blood flowing. So at least I did something. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about is that at least doing something when you can't do anything is still better than nothing. So, because that was so easy, I'm not worried about in the future if I'm in a super pinch to I know I'm not going to be able to do anything or while I'm injured. Because I know that I could just jump on a bike for 30 minutes and do some accessory work, and I still won't lose much of my progress that I had gotten. I was at about two or so weeks that I couldn't do anything heavy breathing, anything under or over 75% or 70% of my heart rate, nothing too intense. But then I jumped right back into it, and I got back on the lacrosse field, and I played probably the hardest game that I have in a long time. Because we had no subs and I had to play both ways, which I never do. And doing that, it was super intense, but I was able to keep doing it because I actually kept my heart rate up doing things while I was injured. So doing something is better than nothing, even when you can't do anything. So I know you and other people have ran into that issue with when babies come along, because basically when that happens, everything drops for weeks, months, and then people pretty much put their fitness to the wayside. But honestly, if you can just find 30 minutes to get your heart rate up, get doing something, put on a heavy backpack and go for a walk, then that's better than just sitting and going, okay, I'll just have to put a pin in this for a couple of months.
Always do something. And yes, I've had children, but I've never let a mere baby affect my workout schedule.
Will stand in my way.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. Always do something. It's got to the point. Now we talk about this in our team meetings, but I exercise 6 or 7 days per week. It's generally one or the other. It's not any less than that. And Emily was actually asking me, she's like, why do you train 7 days a week? Like, because she's following the programming now. She's like, you really only program 4 days, and then you have the fifth meet yourself Saturday. She's like, why are you doing 2 extra days? And so I explained, active recovery and how I'm not going as hard on those days and everything else. But I just feel better in general as a human being when I move, some way, shape, or form. Typically on the days off when I'm still doing something, it's not like loading up a heavy barbell or like going super intense, but it will be some sort of activity. Lately, it's been a lot of cycling, a ton of cycling. But yeah, always move. I agree with that.
Yep.
All right, man. Did you watch any of the CrossFit Games?
Nope. I think I saw the first post I saw about it was like a day one wrap up, and I was like, oh, so that's happening right now. And then I just didn't care about it.
Well, see, I had no interest in it. But then I found out that Hunter McIntyre, who is he's like a world famous obstacle course racer.
Oh, he's the OCR guy.
Yeah, and so he got that free invite to the games, and I that piqued my interest. I was like, I want to check in on it. By the time I checked in on it, he had already been cut from the games. So he didn't make it very far. So I ended up not really watching much of the games after that, because I logged in to check it out. But then I checked out the programming while I was on the site. I think this was Sunday, and I was like, this is what the CrossFit Games should be. I know, I've been people think I'm like a CrossFit hater, but that's not necessarily the case. I just think that CrossFit gets you great at CrossFit, and that's it. That's what CrossFit gets you good at, and that makes sense, right? Like, you're not going to do CrossFit and then beat everybody's ass in a 100-mile bike race like I'm about to do. Doesn't happen. You're not going to do CrossFit and then go win a powerlifting competition. Like, it's almost like CrossFit they were going that notion of, we don't specialize. We are generalists. And now that's not true. It's not true. Their specialty is CrossFit. And I looked at their programming this year, and I followed it in previous years, and all 95% of their workouts were just straight short Metcons. Like, that's it. And that's what it should be. Like, I wasn't hating on their tests or their programming or anything like that. I just think that's what CrossFit does now. And I'm not saying it doesn't make you healthy or whatever. We've talked about cortisol and high intensity. We've had those conversations, but I just think it's interesting that they've decided to go that route. They always used to try and throw in some random shit that shouldn't be there. Because it's just embarrassing. To me, I've always thought it was a little bit embarrassing, because they want to they want to showcase their athletes and be like, look, what if we do a half sprint triathlon? It's like, your people will finish it and have the worst times in the world compared to actual triathletes. That's what will happen. It's like, okay, we're throwing a cyclocross bike race in there. It's like, great. Well, it's going to be way worse than actual cyclists. So I've always found that I didn't get what they were trying to do or why they were doing that. And now that they've moved to just hey, our people can do CrossFit workouts really fast. You can't. It's impressive. I think we're good. I think the CrossFit Games, I think that's the way they should move on. I hope that's what they continue to do, but it's really good. It's really good programming for CrossFit specifically, so I think that's pretty cool. And I just want to comment on it, since that's I really follow almost every kind of fitness event out there, like Tour de France, CrossFit Games, strongman competitions on. I'll watch anything. And CrossFit's the only one I've ever been why are you guys doing that? Why are you trying to get into other people's sports because it's not good for you. It doesn't make your athletes look good. It actually does the opposite. So it was pretty interesting to watch. I watched like 1 or 2 events. Let's see, what else do I have? You got nothing to say on that. You're just like, all right, whatever.
Yeah, I didn't even look at the workout. I was kind of curious about it. It was funny because you brought it up to me about or you said they were taking out the sports, and I was like, yeah, well, they have paddling on there. And you were like, yeah, that's not a sport. And then I told you that people actually compete in paddleboard.
I didn't know that's true. They had paddleboarding in there. I didn't know paddleboarding was an actual sport. So, if you're a paddleboarder listening to this, I do apologize. I just didn't know. I thought that was like a recreational fun activity you did on the weekends with your kids. Like, I didn't think that was like a serious thing.
Yeah, it's big in places that you can do that all the time, like Hawaii and New Zealand and stuff like that.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's definitely a good workout. Let's see. I think, a few more. I rode 40 miles on my bike this morning. I just want to tell somebody, and now I'm telling lots of people. But what's really cool, what I really want to talk about, so I'm gearing up for this 100-mile bike race. I don't have long now. We'll talk about it and maybe do a detailed breakdown for one of these podcast episodes after I complete it. But I've been like each year getting a little bit more serious about the race. And before it used to be like, hey, I walk into this thing untrained, let's see what happens. And now I'm kind of doing the opposite. I want to go in trained and see how much better I can be. Like, I'm definitely not going to be anywhere close to competitive. Don't get me wrong. Like, to the actual people who cycle for their living, because they're professional athletes there. But I will just be going as fast as I can with the goal of breaking my previous personal record for 100 miles. But what I think is interesting is I've been riding a lot more, started with the Enduro track, and it's hard to tell if you're getting any better on a bike. You know, it's really hard to tell that. Like with a barbell, it's super easy. You're like, this is more weight than last time. I am stronger, or I PR'd this. And so, and you can do times or whatever. You could look at like, hey, I ran this same thing, like same course, same amount of time, but like some of the places I go, like I'll hit a stoplight one time and won't hit a stoplight the next time, so that's not the best indicator. But what I noticed, I finally looked at some data, and this is kind of a case for tracking as much data as you can. I'm about 5 miles per hour faster on average in my bike rides right now, anything over 10 miles. So that's pretty significant. I'm able to hold a much greater speed on the same, like everything's the same, bike's the same, everything. I'm just able to hold a much greater speed for longer duration. So I think that's pretty huge and something cool to track and to be able to like, oh, I actually am getting better, because I had no idea if I was like, I'm riding all the time, but I don't feel like any better at this. I feel the exact same. So it's interesting to see what the data points out. And that's what I think can be tough when we're in this more performance based fitness like we are, for people maybe getting a little bit discouraged. So I want to encourage everyone out there to like track something. Like if you're tracking your weight or want to look a certain way, that's easy. But if you're performance based, make sure that you're tracking something like your average pacing on miles, or just mile time, or something in general. It doesn't always have to be these max effort tests. Like none of those were like max effort tests. They're just my rides, and I'm faster. So I think tracking something like that will help you. Like you're often looking at your like top end speeds, right? Maybe just out of curiosity, because maybe in like 5 months, still playing lacrosse, maybe that goes up 1 or 2 miles per hour, and you're like, I'm actually running quite a bit faster, So I think it's cool to track stuff like that.
Yeah, I like tracking my paces for certain runs, and that's when GPS doesn't fail me, which it oftentimes seems to do.
Man, you're not making a good case for Garmin.
I don't know what happened. It was some fluke halfway through the workout, and all of a sudden it just dropped out, and I don't know. It's just GPS hates me.
I feel like that's what Garmin does. Like Garmin does GPS. Like I feel like they should.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's supposed to be the top. I think it is the top one. So I don't know.
Hey, if you guys want to hate on Garmin, I'm not hating on Garmin. You contact Joe. Don't contact me about it. I have no thoughts or opinions about Garmin. I've never owned one. I'm sure they're great, but I just don't have one. Okay, what was my last? Okay, two more things. First, so there was a great divide recently in iTunes. This is pretty neat. So there are categories, and a lot of people maybe don't pay attention to this stuff, but we do, because we podcast and we publish information. There was a health category, and then under health, there was health and fitness. And so it's like these niche, right? And then they finally split off. And I always hated that because they'd put like lump us right next to someone who's talking about keto every damn day or whatever, And they finally split it off to like nutrition, or no, it was health, fitness, nutrition. That's what it was. They finally broke it off to fitness and nutrition, 2 different categories now. And so you can browse by category. And we are listed as an all-time bestseller in fitness right now in iTunes, which is really cool. We're like in the top, 20-ish, something like that. And that's 100% due to everyone listening. So I just want to say thank you to everyone who is listening to the podcast, sharing it, leaving reviews. All those things have been super helpful. So I really appreciate you guys. This truly is a listener-supported podcast. There are a lot of podcasts out there. They have ads in there to generate revenue, which I'm not hating on anybody for doing that. Like, if you're going to sink significant amount of time and money to produce these episodes, like you should try and make that back somehow. There are other ones. I just don't like the advertising model because I just might not be able to fully get on board with anybody's products or ad. And then the second way people typically make money through these things is they're just like, hey, I'm putting a lot of time, effort, and energy into this, and I'm an expert, so please donate money every month. What are those Patreon accounts and stuff like that? And I'm not necessarily hating on that either, but that one just doesn't sit right with me as well. It's like, hey, I was doing this podcast anyway, but now that I'm doing it voluntarily, I would like for you to pay me for it. So I just don't like any of those models. The model I do like is the model we have, where we try and provide the best information possible, and our listeners subscribe to a service in which we try to provide the best possible service for athletes on the internet through strength and conditioning programming. So everyone who's listening, who's subscribed, thank you so much. Anyone who's not, take the plunge, do a 14-day free trial, jump into this stuff, and start the training. It's for anyone who's serious, great. Like, this is the place for you. If you want to get serious, this is the place for you. If you're not that serious, that's fine. We have other options there too, like 3-block, no gear. There is a place for just about everyone in our programming, so I really think that you should jump on board. But if not, that's cool too. We'll convince you eventually. Just keep listening. We'll throw in some antidotes here. But for all of our athletes out there, I appreciate every single one of you, and look forward to hitting it hard with you guys over, at least the next 3, 4, 5 decades or so.
For sure. I think everyone's liking a lot, and I think we even like recording it even better now.
Yeah, it's good. I actually really enjoy these because we get to dive into topics, which today's is grounding, and that's my last update and also my segue into our study for the week. I have to I've been doing this secretly, for years. I don't know. I think I did it all of 2017 and then part of 2018, and then we moved here, and my grounding mat kind of got lost, and I just kind of forgot about it, and then I brought it back. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, don't worry. By the end of the podcast, you're going to know what I'm talking about. But it's interesting. I track a ton of data, and then I went from just sleeping on my chili pad, right? Cool, calm, collected. And then I found my earthing or grounding pad and threw it in my bed, and every biometric thing that I track was better the next day when I woke up. More deep sleep, higher heart rate variability, lower resting heart rate. And this is just one day of data, but I've just been tracking so much. I find it so impressive, the effects that a grounding or earthing mat can truly have. But the reason I haven't talked much about it is because, dude, it's kind of weird. It's it almost feels like pseudoscience, but now that there's actually some science being brought to the table, I feel a little more comfortable talking about it. And I don't think scientists truly understand the mechanism. I'm going to do my best to explain it. I don't fully understand it. But to me, when I look at things like this, it's kind of a why not do it. It's so easy to do. Now that everyone's like, what the hell is he talking about? What are we talking about doing? Let's jump into it. So I'm kind of calling this episode, Does the Earth Have Magical Superpowers or Magical Powers? And the actual study is called Effectiveness of Grounded Sleeping on Recovery After Intensive Eccentric Muscle Loading. So, Joe, I'm going to let you hop in with some points after I fully explain what grounding is. I have it pulled up in the study. And I'm thinking about reading the whole damn thing. If you don't think I should do that, speak now. Not the whole study. It's a paragraph.
I was going to say.
It's a whole paragraph. The study is very long. It's a whole paragraph about what grounding or earthing is, but I want people to understand. So I'll read. You think I should read it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll do this. It's not terribly long, but guys, stick with me. The reason I want to read this is because this will give you a very good understanding of what grounding or earthing is, and then you'll know, you can tell your friends, at least you understand it. Okay. Grounding, earthing, or grounded sleeping is a process in which the athlete becomes grounded via an electrically conducted device. The person is grounded in an indirect way that corresponds to being barefoot with direct continuous contact with the earth. Nowadays, it is almost impossible to be earthed due to urbanization, insulating footwear in something else. There are various grounding systems available that permit contact with the surface of the earth. This indirect way of earthing or grounding is based on trivial conductive systems like sheets, mats, or wrist ankle bands, adhesive patches that can be used during sleeping or working or inside footwear. These devices get coupled to the earth by a typical cord slotted into a grounded wall outlet. Then there are a bunch of studies. They said the main hypothesis about earthing is based on the connection to the surface of the earth, which is satiated with free electrons. This indirect or direct contact with the earth enables mobile electrons to migrate into the body. And another study suggests that these free electrons act as antioxidants in the organism and could neutralize reactive oxygen species, ROS. ROS are byproducts of mitochondrial metabolism of oxygen and delivered by the oxidative burst as part of an inflammation response. Okay, I'm going to slow down. Blah, blah, blah. Consequently suggests that earthing based on mobile electrons could also prevent or diminish inflammation. So let me, before we dive into it, earthing, grounding, you can do one of two ways. You can go stand on the earth barefoot. So that means the actual, like your actual lawn, grass, ground, something like that. Or, and what they did in this study, you can sleep on a mat, a pad, or you can wear these bracelets and things that they have. Now, I have one of these mats, and it's kind of crazy. It's a mat. There's a little thing that clips to it, and there's a cord that runs off of it, and it sticks into your wall outlet. So, like as I was just reading, and it looks like really freaky. So just imagine my bed. You walk in my bedroom right now. I have one wire plugged into an actual electrical outlet, but it's plugged into the bottom hole. If you don't know much about electrical wires and stuff, there's a grounding wire. Every outlet has to have a grounding wire because electricity gets to the ground. It keeps your house from burning down. That's the hole you plug it into. So of the three holes, it's the circular one at the bottom. You plug it in, and then on top of that, I have this chili pad that's like humming and like another huge white cord. My bed looks ridiculous right now, but I'm sleeping great and recovering like Wolverine. So that is what earthing or grounding is, and we can talk about the actual study now. But what are your thoughts on this, man? I know you've heard of it before.
First, I'm just waiting for you to like add a dome that lowers on top of your bed that increases the oxygen or something.
Dude, I'm all about it. That's what being a complete amateur athlete is. I could sit in a, what do they call that? A chamber, oxygen chamber or whatever, barometric chamber, and increase my blood. And it technically would be cheating for everyone else, but for me, I'm just having fun. I'm not trying to win any prize money. I'm just trying to be better.
No. So the only kind of grounding I heard of before was literally what you said about just standing barefoot on the grass on the field. That's the only way I kind of knew you could do it, but that's kind of cool that there's other things out there. I saw there are, so sheets is really awesome. So that means so you can get as much skin to skin contact as you can. I saw there are also pads as well. I don't know if you have to put those on top of your sheets or under.
How I've actually been doing it is a pad, and it's about 3 feet long by, I don't know, maybe 8 to 10 inches wide. And I put it down towards the base of my bed, and basically my calves are in contact with it.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, that's how I've been using mine. And what's really cool about these, so everyone just heard the mechanism. Otherwise, like I could read more into the study, but they don't fully know why this works. Like what I just read you was their best guess. They're like, we don't know. Electrons on Earth going into you, whatever. We don't fully understand it. And everyone acts like they understand it, but from what I read on the scientific standpoint, now, the problem with this, if you go start researching grounding or earthing, you're going to get a lot of like kooky websites and book recommendations. And that's the unfortunate part, because there might be some legitimate stuff to this and people are immediately going to be like, wow, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, so I won't do it. And I'm not fully advocating or not. I think the science is still relatively weak, but this study points us in the right direction. But one more thing before we move into what they did and what they tested. It's really cool because you can get a voltmeter, whatever you want to call it, and you can ground one of the leads to the earth and the other to you. And you can do that by sticking it in your palm or whatever. And then you can step on the ground on the earth and watch your voltage drop the second you get onto you step on the earth. And you can just go like how I tested this in my house. I have concrete like my driveway, and then next to my driveway is grass, right? So I had one stuck into the earth, and then I had the other one stuck in my hand, and I would be on the concrete. My voltage would be pretty high. I'd step on the earth, it would lower. Step back, it'd come back up. Step back, just so on and so forth. And that's also how I test my mat, because otherwise you're sleeping on this mat and it's like 100% placebo effect if you don't know this thing's actually doing something, right? So I did the same thing with my mat. I tested my mat to make sure, like, okay, when I stand on this mat, does my overall voltage lower the same amount? And it does. So like you can test these things where you don't feel like you're just completely like drinking some secret potion, right? You can see if it's actually doing something and you didn't get sold some like shitty device. But yeah, let's hop into it. Let me pull it up. So they set out to investigate the effectiveness on grounded sleeping on the entire course of recovery with respect to muscle soreness and athletic performance after intense eccentric muscle loading. 22 healthy participants. What's pretty cool about this, they gave half the people a real grounding mat. They gave the other half of people what they called a sham grounding sleeping mat, which was a mat. It just didn't do anything. And it was triple blinded.
Blind, yeah. Yeah,
so participant, tester, and data analysis, everything. It was a triple blind. You normally hear about double blind. They're tricking everybody. Like whoever was the mastermind of this experiment, like the participant didn't know what the hell was going on, the tester didn't know, and the data analyst didn't know what the hell was going on. So triple blind, didn't know what was going on, and they basically had these people do really hard workouts. We can talk about the workouts if you want, but they were just trying to cause as much muscle damage as possible, and that's why they did some like downhill, really aggressive downhill running. Because when you're running downhill, your muscles have to stop your weight, which is multiple, force times your body, and so they did a lot of that. And then they measured a bunch of parameters: your perception of muscle soreness, creatine kinase blood levels, which is like what happens when you have really hard workouts. It's more prominent in your blood. Maximum voluntary isometric contraction for both legs, counter movement jump or drop jump performance, and then they actually tested their blood and sampled for detailed analysis of blood count and serum-derived inflammation markers. I mean, they tested freaking everything, and what they're trying to find out is, do you feel better? Does your blood say that you're better? And they also they made them perform more physical tests to see if, due to their increased soreness and feeling better, were you able to perform, recover faster and like get back at it more quickly, I guess, if that makes sense. Like, can you do a really hard workout today and then another hard workout tomorrow or the next day, with the same intensity? Can you do that? And that's really what they were testing. And in a triple blind study, I mean, drum roll please, the grounding was shown to result in faster recovery, less pronounced markers of muscle damage and inflammation, and all around had like no negative effects. All right. That's pretty much the whole thing. I'm going to read some other stuff, but what do you have, man?
So, I mean, I thought it was really cool how much variety they had in what they were testing. So, performance, subjective measures, and the blood stuff. So they were doing something explosive, a static hold, a actual soreness, like, hey, how sore are you, and the blood markers. So they did cover all their bases, which was awesome, versus just having one thing. The only thing that I guess negative or limiting thing that I would have thought of was their subjects were other students. So I don't know if they're actually like athletes or whatever, like if they actually work out, which would that's the only thing that would actually make the study better. But the fact that everything was triple blind and that
And they were all the same, right? So it wasn't like it wasn't 12 of one type of person and then 12 of another type of person. But that's very true, and that's a really good point, because a lot of the studies we read, sometimes they have those stipulations. They're like, you have to be male or female, you have to be able to bench press this much weight. You know, that's typically what we're looking at. So yeah, that's a really good point.
It took me a while to actually like be able to read some of the charts and stuff they did, because they have a lot of numbers and I just didn't know what was going on. But consistently, one was greater than the other. So I found
that's a major takeaway in the charts, is that that's all you really need to look at, is like, okay, that was the grounding one, that's the sham grounding one, or the ungrounded one. Which one's better? Okay, yeah,
yeah.
And then having to look at those and actually understand, which one is better. Like, how do I know which one is better? I think is a hard part of it as well. Let's see. I think I'm trying to look at my notes and see if I have anything else. Pretty much in agreement with you. There, it was just really interesting. Like, you guys can go check out the show notes and maybe dive into this study. Sometimes, we have deeper access to some of these studies because you have to pay for them or whatever. But this one's not like that. This is fully released. You can read from top to bottom everything we're going over now, see all the charts. So check out the show notes. You can do that into3fitness.com. Check out the blog section, and you can look at it if you want to dive into it. But they get into pretty great detail about the blood markers, which, to be honest, that is not my specialty. I wish I could talk. That's way more medical, like scientific medical, like not in my lane at all. So I would love to have a conversation with an actual medical doctor about the results of their blood tests. And if any of you guys have like some sort of experience in that field or something, it might be really interesting for you to go look at. I know that we actually have a lot of MDs in Garage Gym Athlete. So if anybody's listening to this and you feel like you could take a stab at better, diving into these blood markers and what they found and how significant it truly was. That's another thing I don't understand from my background in history. I don't fully understand. It seems like what they were doing was testing the blood, and they're like, hey, you have more red blood cells, you have less inflammation markers, so on and so forth. But I don't know serum levels, or like, maybe they like grounded is better, but maybe it's like in serum levels, it almost doesn't matter, right? Like, and they don't say anything like that in the studies, and those are things I don't fully know. And the only thing that might keep someone skeptical about whether or not they should do grounding. So any MDs out there, go check this stuff out. You guys are gonna love checking out the leukocytes and the erythrocytes and hemoglobin and MCV and all this stuff that I'm seeing in here on the charts. But overall, it says at the molecular level, we found alterations in serological markers of inflammation. Just all the inflammation markers were better. And that goes a long way. We're talking about athletic recovery here, but if you can reduce inflammation in your body, we've talked about this, that's significant. We're talking about reduction in cardiovascular disease, cancer, and that's where this gets kooky when you start looking at things on the internet, because people are like, yes, buy my grounding pad and you will cure cancer, heart disease. And it's unfortunate because this happens, like people get out of control. Like, yeah, that it kind of like in an offshoot way that's backed up, right? It's like it reduces inflammation markers, but does that mean you're not going to get cancer? Not necessarily, but you can do a lot of research on these things online and check them out. Like I said, I tried it out for a long time, and I never noticed anything super significant when I was using it on a consistent basis. I didn't see like a 40% increase in HRV or like, but I don't know where I'm at and like how much things can really change. Like what should my expectation be? Like, is a 1 to 2% change in someone who's been training as long as I have, is that okay? Like, is that enough like to be happy with? I don't really know. So I never noticed anything super dramatic until when I just brought it back out. After having not slept on it for several months, I sleep on it, and that next day, basically all of my recovery markers are off the charts, right? So, and that's like N = 1 experiment, right? That's not scientific by any means. But my takeaway is this is pretty impressive stuff. And the reason I started to try to do it is because I heard that they were doing it in the Tour de France. this cycling team was doing it to increase their recovery times. And it wasn't a true experiment. They were just like, it was some cycling team, not this most recent one, but like a few years ago. And they were just doing everything they could to try and get better as a race team. And they were doing grounding or earthing. And they had a lot of good things to say about it. So I was like, well, those are athletes, whether it's placebo or not, I'm going to give it a try. That was the main reason I decided to try it out. And yeah, it's been pretty good. And my takeaway is kind of why not try it? I think these pads are like $30 or something. That's nothing like.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
It's like nothing.
Just like with our sleep tips from before, there's very little to lose, little buy-in. It's super easy, small change that if if you need some extra recovery, if you feel like you need to reduce some of your inflammation or whatever, go stand outside on your grass for 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah, the free
Get some
version.
vitamin D at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, the free version is just go stand on the earth. The paid version is like $30 and you could sleep on. And from what I have read is the longer you can do it, the better. So that's why I still think that you should probably get one of the pads because it's going to be hard to be outside for 8 hours, right? Mm-hmm. Like just standing on the earth. Like that's a lot of vitamin D. So that might not be possible for you, but maybe take it into consideration. But I also think that, things like going to the beach, like if you ever felt awesome at the beach, you're doing a shit ton of earthing there or grounding, barefoot in the, like way more than you normally do. And so if you feel great at the beach, maybe it's not only because you're on vacation. Like maybe there's another thing there. So something definitely to look into. But they say, and I said it already, and I'll say it again, there is not like, this is a good study that's going in the right direction, but it is not like this is the end all be all. It said they said based on the results, more research is necessary. They need to find out what the mechanism behind the possible effects of grounding on the cellular and molecular levels. There's like a lot of things they don't know, and that scares scientists. And for me too, like, okay, we don't know a lot of things, but the only way I see it hurting you is if you buy one of the mats and you shove that metal thing into the wrong outlet hole. You would be electrocuted, and that's probably the biggest negative I could see with doing it.
I wonder if you also get it with like being in an ocean or a lake.
I would assume, like, I think so.
Go plug it in. Go take your monitor thing and hold it and then jump in the water.
Well, I can't.
See what happens.
Luckily, it's just battery powered. So, but I mean, I think so. Water is very conductive, right? So I think that it might act the same.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, it might be the exact same. So that's interesting. So that's a study.
I remember it. I remember it coming up in, I believe it was Dave Osprey's book Headstrong. I'm not sure if it was his or somebody else's, but they were saying that whenever they go on trips, on business trips, on flying and stuff, the first thing they do when they land is they'll go and find a patch of grass, a park or something, and do like 15, 20 minutes of yoga, barefoot, bare hands, and just like hands on the earth. And it's basically how they get over jet lag. They just don't feel the effects of jet lag as much because they just go and sit in the field, sit in some grass. So just a little bit of benefit and change from that. So
yeah, I think it was in that book. Yeah, I remember reading that, and I just hate that it sounds so weird. That's what makes people not do things, right? They're like, yeah, that's weird. I'm not going to do that.
It's like you can do it by yourself, but then it's like, hey, if somebody else comes asks me, like, hey, what are you doing over there? Like, oh, I dropped my keys. Like, I'm trying to find it. Barefoot? Yeah, well, I dropped my shoes too. It's
funny, like Emily, like she gave up on me a long time ago for like weird shit that I do. So yeah, it looks like, I mean, I'm basically like sleeping in a time capsule, some sort of futuristic device with all the wires and cords I have coming out with the chili pad and the. It's really not that much, but it's a lot more than a normal person. But she doesn't even like think about it anymore. It's kind of funny.
This is how it starts, and then eventually you're gonna have like a Darth Vader type chamber where somebody walks in and the whole dome comes up.
Yeah, man. If I had to pick one between chili pad and earthing pad, chili pad all day.
That's probably what I'd do.
If anybody wants an update on that, it's still awesome. And no, I'm not affiliated with the company. I mean, I don't know how long I've had it now. At least a month or two. I think maybe 2 months. I think I got it in June.
Somebody else just got one and posted that their recovery was also awesome.
Yeah, and so it's not like, I just like for people to know you're not like freezing cold. Like I turn it on as low as it can go, and it doesn't make me like freezing cold. It's just like, but I used to wake up in pools of sweat before, and that doesn't happen. Like that has not happened once since then, and I just feel very comfortable and relatively cool. Some nights I could get pretty cold. I don't know what the difference is. Maybe it's just colder outside or something, but it's been really awesome. That's a great one as well.
Cool.
All right, man. Well, let's get into this one. Be pretty quick. I just want to talk about it because it's been in our programming so much lately, and anybody who's not in our programming, you could also learn here. And we've discussed things like this, hit on it in podcasts and everything, but just going over the 3 main strength methods that we program and kind of the why behind each one. And I'd love for you, Joe, like you get a lot of questions from our athletes. And so I think you throwing in any stipulations or advice or something, misunderstandings maybe that you run across too with people would be helpful. But the 3 main methods that we talk about or use primarily are dynamic method, max effort method, and sub-max. Quick explanation of those. Dynamic is, I almost need to change how I say this. Dynamic effort lifting is moving the weight with the intent of it being fast. That's how I want to start saying it. Moving the weight with the intent of it being fast. So that's dynamic effort lifting. Max effort lifting is lifting a load for max reps. So this could be 1 rep max, 5 rep max, 10 rep max, 100 rep max, anything that is maximal. And then sub-max is what you see in most any Globo gym out there. So bicep curls, anything, or it could just be, 5 sets of 10 or 3 sets of 5 or whatever, you're operating off
volume.
80% more volume based. It's also called the repeated effort method. So just getting in the reps is very important. It shouldn't be overlooked. But those are the three methods. And I know I've mentioned before that speed, that dynamic effort one is most often overlooked in a lot of training programs. Even some of the more successful strength gurus out there, I've read their books, and for some reason they don't have it. They don't have any fast lifting in there, and I've always wondered why that is. And so that is how each method is, and kind of why we use them in conjunction is because that's what's been proven to be most effective. Max effort, I think, makes sense, but I don't think it makes sense for everybody, right? Like, you don't have to lift max effort, 1 rep max especially, but I think that you should take things to maximal intensity occasionally. Some people are like, well, I don't want to do 1 rep max. I don't feel comfortable. And that's okay. You don't have to do that, but just doing something a little bit more maximal. So maybe taking a muscle group to failure instead. And that's more muscular failure as opposed to like taxing the central nervous system as much. But I think max effort is really important. Sub-max is, fairly straightforward and self-explanatory, but dynamic effort, I think, is where I want to hit on or talk about the most. So what clarifications do you want to make on any of these or questions that come up for you?
Yeah, so especially lately, I think I even answered today. When we have like supersets of 3 or 4 different exercises where you're going from one to the next, and one day, like, it could be basically the same thing, a couple different exercises, but one day is dynamic and one day is sub-max. That's been tripping people up. And some people think, oh, dynamic, that means it all should be done fast, so I should go through all of this work as fast as possible. But the dynamic part is just on a individual single rep. It's not getting the work done fast. It's, can that rep be done fast and the right way? So,
or intended to be fast. I'm gonna start throwing that in there.
So, and people were asking about rest in between. It's like, okay, since I'm supposed to do this fast, then I shouldn't rest more in between. If anything, I think you should rest more in between the dynamic ones because you want to actually be explosive. So, like, okay, so just something dynamic would be box jumps. If you're wanting to try and jump up on top of a high box, you're not going to try and do that as fast as possible as you can. You're going to set yourself up, get ready to jump, and actually explosively jump up on that box because that's how you're going to do it properly. Versus submax would just be, tuck jumps or something. Jump as fast as you can, as many as you can, and just get the work in. So those are two definitely distinct ones. Dynamic, you might want to go lighter just so you can go faster. But sub max, since you're not worried about going as fast, you can go a little bit heavier because you're just getting the work and the volume. And I think volume now is going to be a good indicator for that.
Yeah, and if we had to point to other things, you need to think of sub max as more muscular endurance, local muscular endurance. So building up muscular endurance, and that's what that's doing. And muscular endurance is very important and very beneficial. And now if we had to point to something else for dynamic effort, we'd be pointing to power. So we are building up power. We're building up speed and force development of the weight that you're moving. And the reason you want to do that is because there's a big difference in moving weight slowly and moving weight quickly. And the reason I say the intent is because we just go back a few podcasts, the Lifting Fast podcast we did a few weeks ago. It's very interesting because that was a study, and it just says straight up, the only difference that they, the coaches or the scientists, whoever's implementing this, the only difference was they were like, lift that weight. And then next time they're like, lift that weight fast. And that made all the difference in their force development, power, and then overall strength gains. And so it's something that I think is really important and should not be overlooked. And you can lift weights anywhere from 0%, meaning maybe just your body weight or whatever, to 30%. All the way up to 70%, moving that weight quickly. And each one's going to have a little bit of a stimulus, but the other studies I've looked at, all the way down even to 20-30% of your max. And we could talk about actual barbell squats. So let's lift 20% of your max, which is like a joke. You never see that programmed anywhere. There are actual studies that are like, oh wow, that actually made the person stronger. Like their 1 rep max got better from that. And so those things should not be overlooked. And I think that they often are. And people don't see the point when they see it in programming, or they execute it incorrectly. And that's a big reason why I want to have this conversation, is I want to make sure that people know why we're doing it, which I think that dead horse has been beaten, but then also that you're doing it correctly, which Joe hit on, perfectly, is maybe take a little bit more rest. Just focus. Don't try and infer anything. If I wanted you to do a kipping pull-up, I would have said that. I just said do a pull-up fast. So that doesn't mean do a kipping pull-up. If I wanted to do a clapping push-up, I would have said do a clapping push-up. I said do a push-up fast. And that's a little bit different. And so you don't have to infer anything in our programming. Everything is laid out there for you, and doing it right is. And there's a lot more of it coming over the rest of this wave. So that's why we're talking about it more right now. And anything else, man? Anything I missed? Anything else you think we talk about with those strength methods?
I don't think so.
Okay.
That temper was pretty clean.
Yeah.
Clear.
Yeah, we covered that kind of in the hard to kill method towards the beginning of this new format of podcast, but diving in a little bit deeper on dynamic, I think, is good. So now we move to the workout. This workout is called Grog. Do you want to explain why?
Why the name?
Yeah, why the name, and then I'll explain the workout.
Okay. Yeah. So a Grog Bowl in those in the military is something that, there's in the military they have dining ins and dining outs. Dining outs is when people get all dressed up and fancy and go out on the town. Dining ins is usually members only, and it's a little bit more ridiculous, pretty crazy for people to actually let loose. And typically there is a Grog Bowl where whatever beverage you are drinking, alcoholic or not, everybody pours some into it, and then people get called up to the stage for something that they did wrong or whatever during that year, and you have to take a drink out of the Grog Bowl. So it's a mixture of anything and everything that people are drinking. So this is
and hot sauce and a bunch of gross stuff typically.
Yeah. It's usually not enjoyable. So this is the coach's Grog Bowl of a workout, to where everybody kind of put their own input and put in something and came up with a workout. Yeah.
So I wanted to have a coach's workout. So we had everybody submit something that they wanted to see, and then I would kind of mastermind it from there, tweak and change and adjust, and then turn it into a Meet Yourself Saturday workout. So we had a meeting about that, and then we created this, or I put together from everybody's input. This will be the second Meet Yourself Saturday workout we've ever programmed that has a bike ride in it, and we'll talk about the subs after I get through the entire thing. So you're going to ride 1.5 miles. You'll then put on a vest, 20 pounds. You'll do a 400-meter plate pinch carry with 20 air squat with a 20 air squat penalty for every rest or dropping of the plate. So you'll walk 400 meters with a plate pinch carry. You get to pick the plate. And then if you drop it during that 400 meters or have to rest or whatever, that's 20 air squats. Then after that, I recommend going 200 meters out, 200 meters back. You'll do 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 of kettlebell deadlift and lateral box step up. And the only asterisk there is in between every rung, so going from 10 to 9, 9 to 8, you would do a farmer's carry for 50 meters. So with that kettlebell. So kettlebell deadlift, you do 10 reps, then you do lateral. After the deadlifts, you go do a farmer's carry for 50 meters, and then do your lateral box step-ups, 10 each side, then so on and so forth. Then you get out by going the same way you came in. 400-meter plate pinch carry with 20 air squat penalty for every rest drop. Remove the vest, ride 1.5 miles. Sounds more complicated than it is. Anytime it takes me like 2 full minutes to read a workout, that's pretty bad. But once you see it, it'll make perfect sense once you kind of envision it or see it written out. What stipulations, tips, strategies, what do you got?
So the kettlebell deadlift is just a single kettlebell, so go heavy. And so you're going to be gripping that with 2 hands. But then when you're doing your farmer's carry with it, it's 1 hand. So, single arm with the suitcase carry, whatever you want to call it. So you can switch your arms for the 50 meters if you want. Single plate for the plate pinch. If you don't have a bike, you aren't going to ride the 1.5 miles. So it's going to be half of that for run or row. So if you're a meters person, that would be 1,200 meters of run or row.
Yeah.
No tips yet because nobody's done it.
No, we actually haven't tested this one. I'm actually
it can even be subject to change depending on how hard it actually is.
Nah, it looks fine. I'm gonna give it. It hasn't been tried as of recording this. If you see something written different in your programming, that means I tested it and tweaked it.
It wasn't hard enough.
Yeah, I might actually do that one. I might actually do it tomorrow because it looks fun.
Yeah, it doesn't seem too bad.
It doesn't seem too bad. The only thing that might meet your selfish is going to be probably the plate pinch carry. If you want to meet yourself,
Kyle for that one.
Yeah, that was Kyle. If you want to meet yourself, then I recommend going really heavy on the plate. If you're like, you know what, I feel like I need to really meet myself this Saturday, go heavy on the plate pinch carry, and you're going to be dropping that thing like every 15 meters, and that's going to be a lot of air squats. So if you go super light, maybe you did like a 5 or 10 pound plate pinch, then this whole workout's going to be kind of easy, to be honest. I mean, it's just going to be another workout. It's not going to be terrible, and it'll be more for time. So you are in control there. How much comfort do you want to kill? It's up to the user.
Yep.
All right, man. That's it. I talked a lot about it at the beginning, but what's your take? Why should people be joining Garage Gym Athlete right now?
Because we educate you on different strength methods and energy systems and training and apply them to workouts and really break down on how and why you do certain things versus just, hey, go pick up that weight a few times, but go even a next layer down, peeling back the layers of the onion.
Yeah, we actually implement the things that we're talking about, which is pretty cool. We don't just make you better at one thing. I think we're becoming the truly the type of fitness that gets you ready for anything. CrossFit's out.
There's even people that have stopped our training because they've learned enough of how to train from our programming because we've taught them somewhat.
Yeah,
they can actually do some stuff on their own. So
that's happened too with like people going through our coaching certification. They're like, well, I think I understand everything now. I'll just write this on my own. Like I'm all for that because I mentioned this before. I think towards the beginning of us recording these new episodes, and I was like, I'll teach you how to program. That's fine, but it's like the oil change, right? Like I have someone changing my oil. I 100% know how to change my oil. So it would save me money to do it, but I don't mind a professional doing it very quickly and paying, not saving the $20 or whatever. Like I'll have a professional do it. And that way I don't jack anything up on the off chance that I do, so go with the pros. All right, man, that's it. Everyone, go check out. I don't have any official recommendations for where you should buy your grounding or earthing mat. It's been so long that I bought mine. hopefully I don't just keep encouraging people to buy stuff. That's not what I'm trying to do with all these things we're talking about. But this one, it's fairly inexpensive and maybe worth a try if you're into the recovery thing. So try it out. I would love for more Garage Gym athletes, if you do try it out, to let me know if you're tracking metrics, if you have HRV data or heart rate data or sleep data, and you start doing the grounding or the earthing mat. Let me know, because I would like to see some unofficial scientific data from our athletes doing our training. Like Joe mentioned, like we don't really know what those people were doing or what they were like. And I'm like really the only person I know in our community doing it. So if more people start doing it and they want to make that small investment wherever they find it, great. But let me know the data. If something improved, I would love to hear about it.
Yeah.
All right, peace out. Thanks for listening to the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. If you want to learn more, go to garagegymathlete.com. You can learn about our training. Let us send you a copy of our book, The Garage Gym Athlete, or you can even get featured on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast. Thanks for listening.